Okay, yeah, I'm going to get another look. The light is a little bit more, you know, the luminance is a little bit brighter. And I just want to get a setting and see if, because, I don't know what the deal is about, certain types of mobile apps, and I don't know why it does it. I haven't found an icon for like a preset for like a 180 flip, but like, normally like, on my touchscreen side of my mobile phone, normally that when recording using the camera on the side of the touchscreen, it normally doesn't present the the reverse letters like on my hat, like I'm looking at now. But when it's like played back, it shows another. It's like it flips twice. And it flips like while recording and then back to what looks like normal. Not necessarily reverse lettering like on my hat or anyway, but yeah, I just want to get a picture of this. Yeah, this is actually a Regions prepaid now card. That is my first customized deal with the text letters Vision VSX ISS mount Olives Plateau, and you see the V is partially not showing, and the U on the word plateau on the top text is not even showing, and the line 6 V twin rainbow, I had actually provided like indentation and spaces to be beyond to the right side of the microchip, okay. And what you're seeing right there is raindrops, because originally uploaded, and what I'm fixing to show you is a Pearl Vision VSX Strata Blue Tom. And what you see me on my YouTube.com channel at Wade ASV Pretty PRIDDY is a Strata Red drum set, okay? But it seems to be like some idea like something about a Stargate program that seemed to be like I kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, it seemed to be like potentially maybe like the issue there. But anyway, I'm in the process of like getting the Strata Blue, which I would have got originally. But anyway, yeah, this is the Regions prepaid now card, and it's got the raindrops on it right there. And predominantly, I originally, put my Pearl Vision VSX Strata Blue Tom. I'm in the making of getting, the complete, Pearl Vision VSX in this Strata Blue double bass drum set, with the double bass and the 4 mounted toms and the thing about it. And I'm going to do a switch from what I have had previously. I sold my drum set. Matter of fact, the Strata Red. To Guitar Center like a couple days ago, okay? But anyway, what I had was predominantly, the 10, 12, 14, and, the 8, 10, 12, and 14 as mounted toms. And I think I'm going to start with the 12 and 14. And then the 16, see if I can get maybe, yeah, I'm going to decide whether or not if I'm going to actually, start with a 12 and a 14 on the left side, on, sitting down, and going to a 16, if I can even get an 18-inch on a mounted tom bass, or if I'm going to actually go back to a 10, 12, 14 and 16, because really on my drum set you see me playing on my YouTube.com channel at Wade ASV Pretty PRIDDY at YouTube.com. There's actually the 8, 10, 12, and 14 as mounted toms. In most of the videos, it's showing like the 4 octobans, all 6-inch in diameter in different lengths, and the 3 rototoms. And I'm actually looking at some more like rototoms. I'm trying to actually get them as Pearl Rockets. The other thing that really seems to be available right now that like as far as like providing networking is like the Chaos Ice Blue octobans with a 6-inch diameter like octobans that Pearl calls theirs like rocket toms, and I prefer to have them because that's really what I'd like to have. And in any case, yeah, so like the availability of the transparency, like right now, it seems to be the only thing that's available is the crystal clear, as far as like the Pearl rocket tom. But Pearl's like one of the only ones that like actually present the 3-inch increments. And previously, most octobans made by other manufacturers like Tama and others presented the 2-inch increments, being that all the octobans are 6-inch in diameter, and the length is the only determining factor of, the pitch and tone and resonance and all that stuff about reverberation and, the attack and all that stuff about, what drums and percussion is about, but Pearl presented, the the 3-inch increments. And actually, you know, I was thinking that I was probably going to and I was trying to special purchase with the 4-inch increments. But, you know, it's kind of like thinking, you know, it's probably why Pearl hadn't done it, because it probably goes beyond any tonal harmonic quality as far as like harmonic tonal quality and resonance and all that, you know, stuff about, you know, sustaining factors of, you know, tonal quality. So anyway, you know, it probably goes beyond, you know, the harmonic value and range of, you know, the normal standard of like, you know, 10, 12, 14, and 16 floor tom, or, you know, the 8, 10, 12, 14 toms, and 16 or 18. I'm about a 20-inch floor tom. But anyway, yeah, so like I'm doing that and converting to the Strata Blue like right now. But anyway, yeah, so like I wanted to get it real quick on this because as far as lighting goes, I think I might go ahead and just go ahead and go with it. But yeah, so like, you know, the thing is about like with regions, okay, it seemed to be, you know, like a disc jockey, an American disc jockey, American DJ like Mobil, like was a DJ with KLOL 101.1 rock FM radio and 97 rock, okay. And it seemed to be the thing about him always, you know, he was known to be, you know, always talking about a pet python. Yet, you know, he had to refer to like several things about assumed a position, and he's the one that actually had, you know, the simulcast on the beachfront, like at Stewart Beach and East Beach in the Galveston area back in the 80s, predominantly, you know, like quite a bit. And that's, you know, as well as like you know, it's a location in Lubbock in the Montrose area, and I believe there was like the other location is predominantly, you know, the up thing, yeah. But anyway, so like in any case, yeah, so like he was referring to the like the assumed position, and it's kind of like now it seemed to be like the assumed position is like, you know, how long it's normally going. If it's just like, you know, the thought of like Regions Bank presenting, you know, the clear access banking as a not a checking account. And you know, like when I was there, okay, and I was there, and I decided, you know, that you know, I just don't want anything to do with checking account, I mean, period, or any paperwork that would represent, you know, the thing of like a paper made or 5610, all the alphanumerics, you know, somewhere between like annotated option abortion and Roe v. Wade is kind of like seemed to be like a method of banking. It seemed to be like ultimately getting to the idea of a preliminary prejudice of product registration of a birth certificate, as whether it's going to be, you know, some idea of graffiti or confetti beyond, you know, the footprint on the birth certificate, or some idea of liquidable equity in maritime law, of some idea of protocol of local area network, and like Mobil 1 and the Graphite being like a maritime law of like the footprint like on a birth certificate. Yet, you know, the Graphite, it seems to be that Mobil 1 seems to be the one about, you know, the Graphite, and even the toner quality and the pi r squared thing about the, you know, using pi r, the radius of a circle, to get a diameter, and things between, you know, circumference and volume. You know, like, you know, the car sound, life's the same, moving stereo, life's the same, except for, and I always like add life's the same except for Fred Flintstone's shoes. And, you know, the cylindrical thing about, you know, the cartoon in that way, it seems to be that it presents the color of like toner and graphite of like a copier process. And there's only two, and one of them is orange, called the cambium photoconductive material on the drum for like that uses toner, yet it has the particles like graphite that are used to actually, you know, there's electronic charge on the drums, and the metal particles like graphite, okay, it allows some idea of like an electronic magnetic based upon, you know, the charge on the drum, and it lifts the toner up. But the thing about like Mobil 1 uses graphite, it's like the liquidable equity of a footprint, yet the graphite itself is like, you know, the fingerprint and biometrics, and it going beyond, you know, the paper of like, you know, the toner and the quality and the graphite, getting into, you know, the electronic side of a copier process, and the other drum being like a silver selenium is photoconductive and presents the same issue that like the particles like graphite in Mobil 1, it's like you know, like a footprint being like a carbon footprint, and absentee voting, and the idea of like, you know, some idea of like fingerprints and biometrics beyond, you know, the thought of like, you know, what toner means in the copying process, normally involving paper. Yet with LightScribe, Isometrics is, I mean, it's like LightScribe and biometrics, beyond, you know, the toner and the color code and the particles like graphite. Okay, Mobil 1 actually presents like Mobil 1 with graphite. It's Mobil 1, yet it presents itself almost like a stationary engineer in the way of like what Mobil 1 is in some way in alphanumerics. And I'll have to think about it, and I'll come back later and talk about it. But it seemed to be the thing about the graphite, beyond the thought of maybe whether or not, a preliminary prejudice of product registration of a birth certificate, and what the front lines of the beachfront is to immigration, customs enforcement, and the difference between like business and corporate law. The less extortion, I mean, like Van Camp's, beanie weenies, I mean, for real. And some idea, somewhere between proclamations and declarations of the mayor's office as compared to, ratifying and codifying, and, like constitutional law and color code, in the Black Book, constitutional law, as well as state statutes annotated, various state statutes annotated and color coded that way, and ultimately it seems to be, getting to the one book about jurisprudence that identifies like pastel green and all that stuff out, between, the golf course and the idea, the black thing that would be representative like warehouse districting in a way of, gross national product of importing and exporting, yet maritime law presenting the idea of like a method of banking as like boycott and embargo, some idea of like not necessarily identify as like purgatory or like some religious experience, but I mean, isn't that really some idea like what that's not like really funny, like in any kind of way? So like in color code that way, it seems to be, it presents the issue of, what boycott embargo is of like maritime law of liquid equity at the same time. Think about the carbon footprint on the front lines of the beachfront, and the thing about the Christian thing about the front lines of the beachfront, and there's like two people walking, and they're like the invisible, okay, and there's like 4 feet and 2 sets of prints, like two people walking, there's only one. Once again, it's like the question, okay, Lord, where were you when I need you most? Okay, it's kind of like that's when I was carrying you. Normally not identified as some idea like now in my mind of a Stargate program, some thought of like the mind's eye for it is written, for the biggest words of the King James Version Bible, and the military burial deterrent. It seems that the word deterrent is really about, the written part about the mind's eye. Seem to be quite a bit about it in certain factors involved, but in any case, so I mean, it gets to like whether absentee and a carbon footprint is only representative, Jose, can you see by the dawn's early light, and for Purple Mountain's majesty and all that good stuff about color, purple being like 88 or Roosevelt New Deal like being like 88, okay, and certain factors of the Delta Force presenting, all that stuff about the biggest mouth of the river, like Plymouth Rock and acceptance space of the century. Haley, Iacocca, and all the stuff about, the triangle and the Delta Force, and the electronic schematics representing the Delta and the biggest mouth of the river, as a triangle, and the Power Square thing about, the 6-point star, and Israel, and all that stuff about absolute values going through, like, algebra and calculus on into quantum, and, some 90-degree factor about, the difference between, like, reading English from, horizontally to, like, Japanese and vertically being a 90-degree, the principle of, like, with the absolute values, being the vertical bars as compared to, the Israeli flag. And somewhere in my mind, it's kind of like, it seems to be, it presents the 6-point star, some idea of like a boycott embargo, almost like a patent pending. It's almost like somewhere in my mind, it's like really kind of like not exactly, quite the way. I mean, I haven't heard a word about it. I mean, just quite a bit of shit. I mean, it just like happens, okay? And on and on, about certain factors. But anyway, yeah, so like I'm at Regions Bank now because like, Wells Fargo was presenting some issues like that really just seriously, so like you were baptized there in the gold rush, right? Yeah, and you were on a stagecoach, yeah, sure, yeah, so like, it seemed to be like, thing about the, all that stuff about certain information involving, the gold rush and the McDonald's Golden Arches, because it seemed to be, like, and likewise, in addition, the 2 half cycles above, the one line in oscillation, American cycles per second, in oscillation of a half cycle above and half cycle below. But it seemed to be the principle of the gold going up and down, because everyone knows, like at the New York Stock Exchange, the price of gold goes up and down. The same thing about 1 cycle per second of like measuring frequency in oscillation that way. But yet at the same time, it's like a degree beyond the classroom. McDonald's Golden Arches being, both cycles above, a degree level of reputable standards of continual participation. And it's the same thing about, the electronic schematic fish of a half cycle having some equality representative in a different visual, but the same principle and meaning that way of what is, the electronic symbol for, the Christian thing about, the electronic fish. And normally it's not even identified as an electronic fish, but it's like, a half a cycle above and below, and somewhere and a degree level of reputable standards being the side by side thing, some equating thing of equality that way, looking like the electronic schematic fish, representative of swimming upstream in the American history about Calamity Jane and the Pearl and all that stuff about in the river and the jet stream, ultimately getting to the thought of all that information. Well, anyway, so like the Wells Fargo presenting the clear access banking as not a checking account, okay? I mean, like it wasn't happening like when I was there. I mean, it just wasn't going to, okay? But it seemed to be the thing about, like a Regions Bank, and the EA Sports is like a thing about football, okay? And the football's like, the global quadrant of, the global map shaped like a football, thought of like anatomy like an Oval Office, okay? And the thing it is that all that stuff about, degree level representative consumer participation, or some idea of EA Sports representing some idea of globalization, international financial management, as an EA, as an executive administration, which seemed to be, the thing about the American DJ, like a Mobil between like a KLOL 101.1 FM rock radio station, before it actually transitioned to like a Latin radio station. And Univision took its place there, like at Highway 59 and West Loop 610. And the thing of it is that it presented, the information I'm talking about, but I'm going to try and get, straight to the Regions Bank, because it seemed to be the thing about insights is like, it's presenting all that information at Wells Fargo as clear access banking, yet it's going back and forth between it's not a checking account and the proper numerical composition between the P being silent and the P being visible. I mean, like all that's happening between like a 15-digit card like of American Express. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the American Express or the Bluebird card being, not the question of a 15-digit or some identity involving the alphanumerics of 15, or, face value, or telepathic face and all that stuff about, 15 or the 15th letter being O, or looking like a 0. And, the idea of like going beyond the alphanumerics of like lighting of what would be normally thought of as a commercial venue, maybe not even venue, maybe a commercial building more so, whether it's public or private, or how it's even used, with the lighting rated at 177 volts. It's like the thing about alphanumerics, because it normally has like a minus sign, and going through a circuit. I mean, so like not cool, not knowing, certain factors like there's. But the thing about the cartoon, it seems to be ultimately driver's education on campus at the high school. And when it seemed to matter most, about the one cartoon about the eyes having plus signs. And anyone that knows anything about the algebraic test of inversion of like the equal sign having a line to it would present, the thought of maybe, 2 plus signs vertically going up, the thought of going up or going down, or, the thing about, algebraic test of inversion, does the answer equal the results? Either it does or it doesn't, and that's what the algebraic test of inversion is. But, the thing about alphanumerics presenting the subtraction sign and all the principles of, that cartoon in driver's education, it seemed to be like, when does it matter most to the Department of Public Safety? When a high school yearbook doesn't, present the publisher's name, location, city, state, street, address, zip code, phone number, email, anything. Like, when does it matter most? It seemed to be like really, does it matter most? Like, just only when liquid equity is on the front lines of the beachfront is like an intellectual property, or some idea of like having fair use as intellectual easements of like royalties, or whatever, the thought of what meaning means is like multinational corporations and international banking systems presenting itself, whether or not if a birth certificate is only idea of liquid equity based upon whether or not it has any biometric meaning, or like rising to the occasion, to the fact that beyond paper may equating to some idea of like 56 is 10, and ultimately the alphanumerics in 9-4 annotated adoption, abortion, or Roe v. Wade. My name is Wade, okay? I'm a drummer, okay? And the thing of it is that like I thought about this so much. It's really something to seem to think that it goes on, but the information at Wells Fargo is presenting itself as like clear access banking. Yeah, it's like what's going on like inside like Regions Bank, with like the thought of like insights, or insights really presents the issue of like a security camera of like the national deficit yet available in closed captioning for the hearing impaired. Is that true, or is it only the thing about YouTube or some idea of like white earth being YT, and all the white stuff about, you know, the Social Security Administration's phone number, 1-800-772-1213. 12, you know, is automatically like L, and M is like 13. For like L and M, it's like, you know, legal media automatically to me. Presenting some idea of like whether or not if legal media and deposition is the only difference of a HMO and a PPO, and the thing about, you know, the misappropriation allocation of Mississippi, you know, being the ISS and the SSI and the PPI and the PPO and the HMO, because it seems to be the hypothetical metaphor of the Mississippi and the PPI and the PPO being the IO as compared to the Euro and the Eurodollar. I mean, in that way, and what insurance is in the way of annuities as compared to, you know, where's the credit as compared to some idea of like life, or the thought of whether or not if a current event and current affairs only based on whether or not if absentee voting is only a method of banking as an endorsement of a checking account or the history of a mailbox, is ultimately getting to what television programming only means in a dimensional clause of the direct circuitry, ultimately seemingly Washington, D.C., and Washington being the alphanumerics of like, you know, 130 television and electronic god, or a telepathic map, or a telepathic eagle. The alphanumeric's 130 that way, as compared to, you know, the whether it's an initial or an acronym or abbreviation. DC, like a dimensional clause, presents, you know, the idea of what a degree level is, degree, non-degree, or, you know, what the deal is of what level, whether it's an associate's, bachelor's, PhD, or like master's, you know, I mean, you know, or doctorate, you know, or what the case may be, and direction that way, you know, or whether or not a medical power of attorney using fixture in real estate, or having fair use of only what 8 ohms only seems to be, of like quadrants of like global map presenting, you know, the Oval Office in the form of like EA Sports in football, or some idea of like the Easter basket and the EA Sports presenting, you know, the thing about, you know, what I see and feel like, you know, the global, you know, map presenting the quadrants in the spherical shape of like a football, and it seemed to be like the 90 degree of quantum involving, you know, the thing about like a landscape or a portrait being a superimposium, some idea of transition, and electronics involving, you know, special effects and waveform involving attenuation, and the 4 increments between 24, 48, 72, and 96 of customizing waveform. And I'm not sure about everything that's involved with those increments, although they are 24, 48, 72, and 96, like customizing waveform. And that's normally of the horizontal parameters of post-production, and the deal about the vertical parameters being live, as the only thing I've ever seen live is vertical, presenting the transparent like parameters, what would be normally the thought of like visible as horizontal in post-production, customizing waveform, but doing it live vertically is the thing about, you know, the only thing I know about it being live involving quantum attenuation and digital signal processing involving like a display of like 3D graphics in orbital and all the stuff about 3D orbital type of effects with digital readout displays on, you know, that you know, I've heard the word perpendicular spiral, you know, really beyond the, you know, even, you know, the thought of you know, spiral notebook and like Fort Meade, and Fort Meade being, you know, the thing about national security, or, you know, somewhere in my mind there's like the position, it seems to be like the name Robert Stevens, and the alphanumerics of like 182 and like telepathic winner, 182 like Robert Stevens, like a corporate executive, national security, and, you know, I'm not sure if it's just a name and a position in a building, or, you know, or if it's just like, I mean, the entire thing about English and the birth year and like, you know, biblical prophecy of like 3rd and 4th generation, and it seemed to be, you know, that as well, but it seemed to be the 3rd and 4th generation referred to is almost like the 3rd and 4th generation of alphanumeric from A to Z being like, you know, 1 to 26, then 27 to 52, then 53 to like 78 being the 3rd generation, the 4th generation being like 79 to like 104, and, you know, ultimately, you know, the thing about, you know, that being like, you know, the 3rd and 4th generation. And it seemed to be predominantly, you know, where it's really at, based upon my birth year being 1964, in many kind of ways. But anyway, like I'm at Regions Bank, okay, and I have a prepaid note card, and, you know, like, the first time I uploaded was the Pearl Vision, you know, VSX like in Strata Blue, yet, you know, there was like an alternative conflicting information on a website that, yeah, it's like, okay, you use logos Yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be like really an issue using a pearl drum, and you know, although like I wound up like some idea of like it's raining in New York City. Is that what this is? Regions Bank idea of like Dream Theater, huh? Well, anyway, yeah. So like I'm gonna try and stay away from the thought of like mentioning anything about it, but really it seemed to be like the raindrops almost, yeah. But anyway, like this is the first card that I never activated because as you can see the V is partially cut off, and the letter U on plateau, and what that is I have a Pearl Vision getting what you see on me on my YouTube.com channel at Wade ASV Pretty PRIDDY at YouTube.com on a Pearl Vision VSX Strata Red with the black hardware. Is what you see is like a total of like with symbols and special effects, including the hardware. It's like 35 pieces. Yeah. So like anyway, and that's what I'm working on with the Strata Blue like right now, because I just sold my set a couple of days ago to Guitar Center. But anyway, like my thing about the Vision VSX ISS Mount Olive's Plateau, and think about line 6 on this particular like special customized deal. The indentation that would be to the right side, it was like presented before I actually submitted this, yet they sent it back, and I never activated because it's the line 6 V twin rainbow. It's about a Ford stock and James and all unit thing about the Alphameric's 200, and like the thing about celebration, 200-year celebration of America, and all the Alphamerics going through like the circuit, and ultimately my thing about thinking about Permian Basin representing some idea of what the Permian Basin is to a plateau or Purple Mountain's majesty. I mean, on one side, I mean, on a Saturday morning, approximately how many years later, I'll actually really have to think about it. It was about the same time on a Saturday morning of a baptism at a Mormon church. I mean, it's like almost at the same time. And how long that rainbow was there, I'm not real sure. But, like when I looked out the window, it's like, that's like one of my first thoughts, because like of a Chevy Chase movie, like Best Defense, and biblical scripture, money is defense, and the red laser at the pool. It seemed to be the deal about what's going on with like security cameras in banks and various locations of a laser. Really not cool about, feeling like, everything about, idea of like banking has been like, a sting operation. But I don't really view that as anything other than my thought of a rainbow, not necessarily the laser coming from outer space from a satellite involving a red laser, and the poolside deal about the glass shattering, or Mick Jagger shattered thing about some of the song he sings about. But anyway, it seemed to be the thing about even the Rolling Stones song, yeah, about the shatter part about, and certain bands actually sing about it and use that particular word, and that is the one movie that automatically seemed to be in my mind about the rainbow. Although it is like a satellite, a laser coming from a satellite, and in that way, like that one particular Saturday morning, Fort Stockton, Texas, approximately the same time of the baptism on June 14, 1992. How many years later? I mean, it's like wow. I'll actually have to think about it. Possibly around maybe the end of maybe even like 2010, 2006, 7 or 8, like but I'll actually have to think about it. Yeah, really. Yeah, I'll do that. But anyway, yeah, it seemed to be the thing about even the possibility, what the deal is about the Ford Explorer Sport Track, the short bed truck, the Ford Explorer Sport Track. In 2010 was like the end of its manufacturing. I thought it was like one of the cooler trucks. But anyway, yeah, it seemed that was like the end of that, and so considerable other of like manufacturers. Like Saturn Sky was like around for quite some time, and I think that before, it's like a smaller version of the Corvette. It presents the deal about Saturn Sky and the rainbow, and the color code of International Electronic Engineering, and the Mercedes-Benz actually distributing like the Smart for 2 smart car. And ultimately, the thing about Cyan IQ and the 200-year celebration in James and all unit, I mean, actually it was on it, okay? But the thing about the IQ, Cyan IQ, is that like everyone knows that it's like like the highest possible score is like 200, yet Cyan is pronounced like and spelled like SCION IQ. Yet likewise, in addition, the similarities of Zion, okay, and 1,000 years of peace is the deal about HTTP being 64, likewise Zion, and like the Zion IQ of the Lord Jesus Christ being Alpha-America's 200-year celebration of America, and like a plenipotentiary and a bicentennial drummer and all kinds of stuff about the Permian Basin in Fort Stockton, Texas, presenting information like what seemed to be the difference in transition between a 6-string electric guitar to the 7-string, and it seemed to be the Pecos sector guitar. You know, some people pronounce it, you know, the SCHECTER sector, however it's spelled. But anyway, it seemed to be like the guitar about that geographic in my mind. You know, like Emirates Airlines, Guitar Airline, and like Boeing in that area. Likewise, even Cape Canaveral and the Peso and Pecos County in pronunciation of Pecos as compared to Peso, or you know, some idea of like the idea of like Cape being Pac or Peso, Pace concerts, okay, and Cape Canaveral, you know, and what it is like NASA that way of like, you know, summit meetings involving, you know, certain factors. Austin Powers, Bluebonnet Paralegal, and the thing about, you know, Imperial and like Bluebonnet being the sticks of butter being, you know, yellow and all that stuff about the rectangle, and it seemed to be the deal about international financial management of, you know, Abraham Lincoln Continental, and the rectangle that way, and the 90-degree, presenting, going through a Stargate program, you know, buildings that weren't normally even identified that way, like engraved granite was like, you know, even being able to remember would be, you know, only probably Entertainment, World News, and National News, and even Microsoft was like, has been like a major factor, like realizing that memory has become, I mean, the huge thing. You know, going through it, I mean, you know, seeing stars and certain factors of like, you know, entertainers and entertainment and involved going through the circuit. I mean, I still didn't even consider it a Stargate program. I mean, it's like years even after like a 10-year period, considering like a 15-year period, really even more, really, truthfully. But when I realized, like, for the first time, this is the year 2024, and my thing was, like, going through, you know, starting, like, right at the end, really, of 1993, but 1994, 95, and 96 was, like, I mean, the first 3 years of the 4 years, 3 months was, like, I mean, really seriously intense. And certain factors during that intense time, you know, I didn't realize that memory had really been an issue, but I knew it was, like, that intense, and didn't realize the memory was the issue. Although I was thinking, like, wow, you know, but anyway, so, like, something about that in the World Trade Center as compared to the idea of, like, Six Flags, something about Astroworld, even Cisco using, you know, the matchsticks, draw stick, or, you know, thing about poles being used to manufacture a certain type of, what would be 7-Eleven's idea, not really the crazy straw, but a roller coaster, and the pronunciation of Cisco toilet paper as compared to Cisco communications, between the difference between like public and private, and whether or not if it's going to be the telephone or networking, and what type of networking is going to be, whether it's a public or private issue involving communications, or, you know, the idea and principle of like available closed captioning for the hearing impaired and national deficit, and, you know, some idea of hardware and software between public and private. And, you know, the thing about Cisco is presents the different lengths of like poles that are actually used for making that type of roller coaster on, you can see it like on the book cover, GIT, Geospatial Information Technology, and the roller coaster is almost like the toilet paper of Cisco, spelled SYSCO, Cisco Toilet Paper Houston, as compared to Cisco Communications being the thing about, you know, CISCO, and networking involving like hardware and stacks and switching and routing that way, and the difference between like a hardware side of like hubbing, switching and routing, normally identifying like IP address and routing it to its fastest way to get to its destination as compared to a node in software engineering. And the difference between a node, it doesn't switch and route internally to speed up any processing to what would be considered like a hotspot identified by a node, because what a node does, like an anatomy, what's going through it, I mean, it's going to go through it. It's not going to be switched and routed to dissipate any, you know, accumulation or traffic in a way, and sometimes it's identified as like a hotspot in networking and, you know, performance monitoring, as well as like Orion performance monitoring, or sort of like a software engineering, identifying a node that's normally some point during, you know, networking, identifying what would be in hardware as a hub, switching and routing the node on a software side of, you know, more so of automation, not necessarily mechanical, or some idea somewhere in between solid state and software engineering. You know, it seemed to be the deal about bandwidth and spectrum almost in that way, as compared to, I mean, the principles of that, and some idea of like amplification, or, you know, power and principle of like electrical electronic that way. But anyway, But anyway, yeah, so like I was getting off in it, and this is the deal, is that I never activated this card with Regions, okay? And that is it right there. I'm trying to get a good shot of it, but it's because like the U is not even visible, and I'm trying to get that glare out of it. But yeah, so like I never activated it. I hadn't even used it, okay? And this is like really what's going on. It's kind of like, you got to be kidding me. And now, so like, you know, as you can see right there, that's my drum, okay? I uploaded that picture of a Pearl Vision. Okay, that is a Pearl Vision VSX in a Strata Blue tom. It's a 12-inch tom. And I took a picture of that because I uploaded it for like my customized card on Regions Bank. With as you can see in the green letters there, Vision VSX, ISS Mount Olives Plateau. And, you know, now instead of the twin rainbow dealers, as you can see, it's like indented on the right side of the microchip. And it's like line 6, V-Series, 7th Heaven. And the thing about 7th Heaven is the thing about, in my mind, of like the Permian Basin in Fort Stockton, Texas, and some idea of Pace Concerts and Ector and Sector, We International, of like Warner, Electra and Atlantic, presenting like the 3 of like Guitar Airlines and Emirates Airlines and Boeing. And some information that's going on in the James Bond unit and the one James Bond movie. It's not about the Bond. It seemed to be the thing quite a bit about that particular location. Even, you know, some videos back in the 80s, it seemed to be, you know, some idea like the exclusionary rule provision, ultimately, you know, like Wyatt Earp and the YT of YouTube, Wyatt and being YT or Wyatt Earp, and the Earp thing about being, you know, the exclusionary rule provision, the alphanumeric acronym being 39 as compared to the IEEE, the International Electronic Engineering, the big O organization thing, and the difference between, you know, the alphanumerics of 24 and the O being a 0 and the alphanumerics of 240, a difference between like a method of banking. It seemed to be the difference between the lighting being 177 volts of like commercial venue or commercial building that hasn't made the grade as a commercial venue of living quarter. Because, you know, all the lighting seemed to be the deal about, you know, the footprint and the front lines of the beachfront of like whether or not it's going to be, you know, the carbon footprint or some idea of absentee voting or, you know, some idea of graffiti or confetti that haven't made it beyond, you know, the thought of like biometrics on paper, or, you know, got to the LightScribe deal about, in my mind, automatically it's like the Secretary of Treasury, Robert E. Rubin, and like E. Rubin being like, you know, the way Reuben, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and, you know, being like a corporate thing of like, you know, difference between, you know, multinational corporations and business law as compared to like the thought of like immigration, customs enforcement, like and like importing and exporting of like, you know, plain horizons as compared to pie charts. I mean, all that information, it seemed to be, you know, pertinent. And, you know, my thing about the fact that it seemed to be, you know, like a Citigroup hadn't been involved, I think, with like General Motors. And Robert E. Rubin's like, I think, been involved predominantly as like a chief executive officer or chief founding officer or corporate executive officer with like Citigroup. I was kind of like reading quite a bit about him for a while because he seemed to be like on television, I mean, a whole lot. When I was going, and I was like noticing that he was like probably got more television time on television than any United States Secretary of Treasury, according to what I was seeing and when and where I was at going through, you know, the circuit. I mean, it's like Washington D.C. and all kinds of information about him. And in my mind, he was like at the time doing alphanumerics and linguistics. Automatically, you know, the way Reuben is spelled in the King James Version Bible is like Reubin, being alphanumerics of 69, like Texas, Jehovah, Mexico. And, you know, I didn't think it would be a factor whether or not if New Mexico would be the issue between Region 0 and Region 1. Region 1 being the United States and Canada as compared to Region 0 being the thought of, like, everywhere except, like, you know, and some idea of the equator or some idea of degree level reference standards that consist of participation and made a grade beyond the front lines of the beachfront or maritime law involving, you know, internet protocol of local area network or, you know, deciding whether or not if human capital is on the signal difference of defining the meaning of what the acronym SAN software is to International Financial Management, as whether it's going to be a securities and annuities network of human capital or storage area network based upon an endorsement, or some idea of like strategics. I mean, for real, you know, designating what an idea of a Stargate program and like not have anything to say about it. Okay, well, you know, well, this is what I have to say about it, okay? Well, anyway, so like, you know, I'm at Regions Bank, okay? And all this information that Wells Fargo's been presenting as like clear access banking that it's not a checking account. And it presents all that information. Like Insights is the only issue where it's happening at in Regions Bank. Well, anyway, like I'm customizing a card, and I don't. Does anyone like on the planet have a problem like Pearl Vision, VSX Strata Blue? You see, somewhere in the Stargate program, I was brought back to my home here. Okay, now I'm in a 10 here. Not that I'm, thinking that it's like a patent pending. Oh my God! But legal media and deposition, teleprompting, like live, like auditing, legal media and deposition, huh? Well, anyway, so like I'm on YouTube, okay, and this is what I have to say about it. It's because it seemed to be the issue, really, whether or not if the thought of a biometrics is the only issue. It seems the difference between like toner of copy and process and graphite. Mobil 1 presents it as viscosity, and the thing about Mobil 1, the graphite, it's like metallic particles that actually are used in the copying process to lift the toner. It's like black, okay? Like in fingerprints and biometrics involving paper, it's like not necessarily LightScribe. It's like paper made, like 56 is 10, but yet the biometrics being like of LightScribe. I'm sure that anyone knows anything about biometrics and LightScribe and thing about the electronic side, not the paperwork of fingerprints, but biometric in a way beyond some idea of conversion from analog to digital, and beyond the thought of like pastel and Technicolor, and and what the real deal is about options and futures as compared to retroactive history as storage area networks in the business hours of an ATM. There seems the difference between 177 volts of lighting. There seems to be the issue between whether or not if a fixture in real estate is only defining the meaning of television programming, whether the degree level of like representatives of constituent participation has any idea or concept of measuring cycle per second and oscillation of frequency as compared to waveform, and all that stuff about all that stuff that I've been referring to. But in any case, so like now it's kind of like the Pearl Vision is kind of like I was brought back to my home. Okay, the furniture had been changed, a drum set that I didn't even have yet. I don't think it was even available at the time, between like even before like 1994, 95, and 96 or anything. I don't think it was like even available Pearl Vision drum set anywhere I know in the Houston area. I mean, I would have automatically known. But like the drum set that you see me on my YouTube.com channel in the year 2023 and 24, really before then, a couple of years ago, because I've only been like doing the YouTube thing for really, there's like a year and a half, like going in and out of the hospital, and some idea of like some combine of issues. Yeah, so there's like minutes before I'm having to call 911, and what you're seeing me on YouTube is like, issues involving like air quality and all kinds of stuff going on in my home before, during, and after about air quality and all that stuff. It's like you're seeing on my drum set, and it's like really not cool about respiratory, the kind of issue like going on with that stuff, okay? Like I mentioned before, like keep my house clean almost become an insult to continue to try and continually. And it's got to the point to where really it's ultimately getting to be some idea in my mind of like everything I'm talking about, because this thing of it is, it seems to be like whether or not if a mayor's office is identifying some idea of proclamation, declaration, and some idea between the Vlasic Stork and Van Camp's, and some idea of like Camp David, or what that is, as some idea of like a boycott and embargo. Ultimately, in my mind, some idea of a religious factor of like Israel, and some Afro-Americans that way of Israel being 64 and Israel being 73, Paris and Egypt, and even the book Secrets of Temple House Preserved runs the country, and all the connectivity, the big triangle between the De Beers diamonds representing even the thought of like a Pearl Beer, or home of the 1100 Springs, and really, and ultimately it seemed to be the deal about Chevrolet Geoprism presenting the issue like a Saturn sky, the colors of a rainbow. Yet, Chevrolet Geoprism presents the nanoluminous like the colors of a diamond, a prism, like the car, the smaller version of the Corvette, as Saturn sky, presenting the idea in my mind of, the rains, an identical twin rainbow, side by side, vertically, like a normal rainbow, but it's like the most intense, most colorful thing. I was wondering if it was like a man-made deal with the lasers from outer space, from the satellite, the movie, Chevy Chase, the best defense. And the biblical scripture identifying, money as a category, money as a defense, and the Department of Defense and the DOS of like Commodore and think about all that stuff about Commodore 64 and Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, for real. But the thing with this is that I mean, for real. I mean, it seemed to be quite a bit about what Compaq had turned into beyond the Summit, Compaq Center and the Houston Rockets, and the Oracle Corporation seemed to be the big deal about the Oracle Corporation, AOL, Apple, and like Oracle, and the Houston Rockets being the Compaq Center. The Houston Rockets and the deal about the Oracle Corporation and the Apple Corporation and AOL. I mean, both buildings are like a huge circle. Okay. Now, and the Apple Corporation is like a big O, thing, and it's like it's like, as far as I know, it's like not covered as compared to the basketball arena of Oracle. I mean, it's like phenomenally the big circular thing, but it seemed to be the thing about time zones and the ozone and the Arctic Circle, and like Abraham Lincoln night vision of like whether or not if the colors of the Northern Lights is going to be the issue of like Northern Lights, and the issue of like Abraham Lincoln night vision, and like the car Lexus LFSA being the thing about the even Chuck Woolley, the 2 and 2 thing, and the love connection, the thing about Abraham Lincoln night vision, presenting the idea of like the only person who studied in the dark, presenting the Colonel as a kennel, or what the mascot of the RCA deal of Radio Corporation America really is in the way of the hood ornament or the phonograph, or what's involved with the idea of like redundant frequency in the way of like squelch or the absolute zero, that many people might not see is like what's on home theaters now as a max, like as 192 kilohertz that I've seen like on Lincoln Continental and Cadillac, the MKZ and the MKHZ. I mean, if that's the difference between like a within range as compared to VSAT communications, I'll actually have to think about if the MKZ and MKHC is identifying some power magnification of exponential quotients of powers of multiplication as compared to the pi r squared and the E equal MC squared. Well, anyway, so like I'm thinking about all that because previously all that information during the hi-fi wasn't quite. I'm sure it was available, but it wasn't really identified like it is on the home theater now. The Alphabet's 192. I mean, the one word, re-entering heaven. And think about the plateau and for mountains and majesties above the fruited plains, and the thing about purple and all that stuff about California being 88 and Mormon, and the thing about some issues that seem to be the Roosevelt New Deal Act, and the 6 presidential terms in the year. This year being 2024 is the next 6th presidential term in office, and how all that's calculated, and what Six Flags and Six Flags has to do with 6 national anthems. Or what the deal is, even with the euro dollar, and the 5 nations, as compared to the 5-point crown of the Statue of Liberty, and some idea of like telepathic TP in Native American Indian, that way of like what a reserve and reverse or preservation. I mean, it's to a circuit, or some idea of like international financial management having intellectual easement, and some claim as some human civil rights in Geneva, Switzerland. In my mind, the being venue only sounds like a univision thing of like language, implying that human civil rights would, in my mind, going through the circuit, being taken. I mean, while I'm asleep, I mean, a considerable amount happened. I mean, it seemed to be for like a 6 to a 9 month period, okay? And, it's like in several places in Geneva, Switzerland, and even remembering anything would only be television. And, the horizontal rectangle being venue, it's like one of them. But like all that, like going on, with the summit meetings and the being venue and human civil rights, it's and how true it is if it's only intellectual duration during a Stargate program. Well, that's what I have to say about it. It's the horizontal rectangle of engraved granite stone being a rectangle. And the thing about international financial management and like a Lincoln Continental presenting the factor of like a 90 degree of a hood ornament. That's the thing about high-rise buildings identifying another location on west side of laser corrective eye surgery, and the thing about an invisible laser, and quite a bit about the prefix of the White House, and something about that. But anyway, it's kind of like right now what you're seeing is like lighting that I use. It's not limited to. This is one of the better lighting that you're seeing like on me right now that I use in like my music videos, like using others that I've used throughout my deal about being a drummer, even a singer. in music video that way. What was then, a little bit before, at the age of 15, realizing something about a laser that, I mean, how could it not? Because it seemed to be the only thing about being a pitcher as a pitcher at the age of 15 that was the one and only, like, entry as a pitcher. And the only other time it was like when I was on YouTube and I had all my lighting and the idea of like a building I was taken to, and they made an area of, the Marathon Oil Company, Tower of Power, with like data foundry in it, and like right next to the Art Institute of Houston. Then was like York County, like San Felipe in that area, in the Galleria area. Likewise, a building that I was familiar with. I didn't know that laser corrective eye surgery was there, but there had been like a deal like with classified ads, being there and like not going to the interview and just going there, and then some idea like what's in the mailbox, and kind of like hearing something about Queensryche and some of the songs, and it's kind of like Queensryche being 140 in Pearland, Texas, and all this information about annotation and certain factors. It's kind of like excuse me, it's kind of like thinking about quite a bit about it because of the way everything had happened. It seemed to be really the memory side of like just a rectangle identifying a building, and that particular building that LASIK's laser corrective eye surgery, and the idea of a coupon being like God's angel, thought of like a LASIK's laser corrective eye surgery being the thing about lighting. The thing about a laser, like in measuring and calibrating national time zones, is as far as I know, is powered by atomic energy that generates the power for a laser that calibrates time zones, actual time and military time, or the difference between a 12-hour time code, time stamp code with the AM and PM that way. But as far as I know, I mean, I'm not sure if every time zone is that way. I'm not real sure about that, but I know only what I've heard about time zones being calibrated by lasers that are powered by atomic energy. And the thing about the laser and all that stuff, and like Chicago, and headquarters like Boeing. And that was like one of my questions about, whether or not if the military bureau determined if some idea of like even the unknown soldier, or if the word's even soldier or military, or what the word really is, as a military bureau determined. I mean, is it the headquarters, the central time zone, or just any time zone as a headquarter of that time zone, if some idea of a military bureau determined would be some idea of what returning home means to a military bureau determined. There seems to be something about the mind's eye, and for it is written in that way. Yeah, so like I have something to say about that, but I don't know if I really will. But I mentioned that really when I noticed and knew for the first time that memory had become an issue was realizing some of the screensavers of Microsoft sequencing what was like Europe's most wealthiest museum. And I thought like, and then realized that I'd seen it several times for like a 3 or 4 year period. And then it's kind of like all of a sudden my memory came back. It's like I was actually taken there in that hallway. And I don't remember much about it, but it's like I was there, okay? And I was thinking, that looks like a funeral home before I realized the memory became the factor. And it's like almost like, here recently, some of the videos are like Egypt presenting, the idea of the word bar with the accent and at and the pronunciation Barrett and some sons. I'm trying to think about what it is, but it's like a bunch of Egyptian music videos with like some pyramids and some idea. I think it's the Barrett and the sunscape and the vision sticks and all that gold and glitter that seemed to be ultimately some idea of Egypt as compared to something that would be presented in a different manner, a futuristic uniform as compared to protective, the night thing. What is it? Is it the Dark Knight video? But anyway, all those videos that are showing about that seem to be all connected and linked to each other seem to be the thing about it. Likewise, actually something about all of them just standing and staring at each other. It seemed to be like the European thing of that one screensaver Microsoft of the European's most wealthiest museum. And those videos in Egypt is presenting, the idea that most of those videos, I mean, everyone's just like, just standing still and just like looking at each other quite a bit. It's like the museum of people, being in the museum and all that like thing connectivity between, you know, some idea and some information between Europe and Egypt, and the Secrets of the Temple House Voters that runs the country. And, you know, the books of, like, even Nimitz class, it presents all the geographics, the analyticals, the alphanumerics, the analytical, the symbolic, the symbolism, and in sets of three, even the way the Federal Reserve works in coordination, and sets of three of the New York Stock Exchange of multinational corporations of, like, importing and exporting, I mean, that way as compared to the plain horizons identifying, you know, I mean, it's like a set, I mean, analytically, even the House of Cards presents in that idea of like a, oh God, international monetary funding, and likewise the book, Secrets of the Temples, and the sets of three, and the geographics of like Europe and the Eurodollar, and the African thing about mining for diamonds, and all the color code of like De Beers diamonds presenting the issue of like raw diamonds, and all the thing about the diamonds presenting the nanoluminance and the colors of the rainbow, and Saturn's sky, the smaller version of the vet, and ultimately the telekinetic role of the pen. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, the analytical and reasoning with all that stuff. But anyway, so like what I'm really getting at is I'm trying to actually get my Pearl Vision VSX like Strata Blue, like on my Regions prepaid now card, okay? I mean, like, does anyone on the planet have a problem with like what you're looking at right there? I mean, like, there it is, okay? Okay, that's like a Pearl Vision, okay, VSX, yes, okay? And as you can see, I'm trying to get to where the glare's not showing on the paper, but it's like Vision VSX ISS Mount Olives Plateau. That's my thing about O. I have my Pearl Vision VSX ISS Mount Olives Plateau. Yeah, all right, yeah. And my Line 6 V Series like 7 Heaven combo. Yeah, and I, yeah. Okay, so like that's my thing about like Fort Stockton, Texas, and like Emmerich and guitar and like Boeing, and some idea of like a transition to the 6-string using the sector Ector as a sector guitar, and it seemed to be like the song Red Rain, and the color, the guitar, and a transition between the idea involving like 7th Heaven and 7-string electric guitar, and quite a bit of like the V series as well as like a television series 7th Heaven, and just landmarking it with like titles of television programming as compared to like litigation de facto and writs of habeas corpus, defining some idea in my mind automatically of like Wyatt Earp and John Wayne. Same issue with like conversion between like analog and digital, having pastel and technicolor. I mean, for real, you know, some transition in my mind. It seemed to be like in Sector Ector in Pecos County in the Fort Stockton, Texas area, and the James and Nall unit being Alpha America's 200, you know, like Christian Alpha America, Lord Jesus Christ, or a plenipotentiary, or the 200-year celebration of America, or a bicentennial drummer, and all that stuff about the bicentennial quarter, and the 13 stars on the quarter, and front back side, the Statue of Liberty, and all that stuff, okay? So, like, to me, the Permian Basin, it seems to me, it presents the issue of the birth certificate between some transition between the footprint, or the carbon footprint, and the biometrics beyond, you know, the thought of, like, a toner of, like, Mobil 1 and Graphite. It seemed to be the one and only oil being 36, or the thing about Chase, or oil, or, you know, even the GIT, geospatial information technology, the GIT thing about 36, and telepathic TP and a TP being 36, and all that stuff about, you know, Chevy Chase and gesture that way of like the Hound, Kemosabe, you know, thing about a gesture of like Native American Indian, the TP and the pylon deal about, you know, the 5-point star, the Statue of Liberty, and getting into the quantum side and all that stuff about, you know, symbolic, analytical, and all that stuff about, you know, alphanumerics and linguistics. But yeah, so like I was wanting to get that in there because I want to show this one more time, because I mean I'm really talking more than I thought. I'm going on like right at like 59 minutes right exactly right now. But anyway, yeah, so like this is the Vision VSX ISS Mount Olive Plateau, and the Line 6 V Series 7th Heaven. I'm trying to get that with my Pearl Vision, yes, VSX Strata Blue, and I don't know what the issue is, but yeah, maybe it's like a drummer's involved, maybe yeah. So like, what's the deal with like the Pearl Vision VSX and the Strata Blue that somehow like was in my home that I didn't even, when I was brought back home, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, not even knowing where I'm at for about 45 minutes. Even after I was like looking at a drum set that I actually purchased, like, God, how many years have I didn't even remember it being in my home or any of that even happening. I mean, I bought the same furniture, the same night, and put it like right next to the Miraca, the mirror vertically. I'm sitting in the dark, and I'm just, and that light was scanning like real slow because it's like voice activated, sound activated, and it like stopped right on me. And when it did that like 2 or 3 times, then I remember waking up, I mean, in the same spot, and that light scanning on me and stopping right on me. And I'm looking at it, and the drum set, and it's like I'm looking at it, and I visually like it doesn't compute to what I'm seeing. Although no, I know I'm seeing it, and I'm looking right at the drum set that I actually purchased. I mean, again, like 15 years later. In my own home. I didn't even know that my furniture had been changed, or I was even in my own home. And like even this tin and certain factors of it, I mean, considerable amount, like for a 6-month to 9-month period, like all around various places around the entire freaking world, okay? And I didn't even consider or even know a Stargate program was my thought, but that seemed to be the point of when I knew. Yeah, I don't like using that word amnesia because I'm just really not going to refer to it because it seemed to be the difference between being awake or asleep when something like an air raid happens, okay, inside going through a circuit, okay? But anyway, yeah, so like I thought I'd mention that because certain factors, and it seemed to be like whether or not if like yeah, if some idea of some like being amphibious, you know, above its alls, you know, beyond like liberal equity, maritime law, making way beyond internet protocol of local area network is only the issue whether or not if Mobil wine's got the graphite in it beyond, you know, the toner quality of graphite and toner quality and all that black stuff in copy and process, you know, and LightScribe. Yeah, a biometric beyond the hieroglyphics and the LightScribe isometrics of like, you know, LightScribe and biometrics that way. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I don't have that much to say because it seemed to be the graphite thing about toner and the electronic going beyond the method of banking, I mean, because of the graphite. Getting electronic beyond like the paperwork of, yeah, like a transition of Technicolor and pastel, like graphite and toner in a copier process of an electronic process. Seems to be the deal, and distinguish the difference between LightScribe as biometrics and going beyond that of like invisible programming and a whole bunch of white stuff. And most people that know anything about biometrics, I mean, it's a bunch of white stuff, like invisible programming, until like you know what it means in waveform. Yeah. So like anyway, I'm gonna like stop right there and like there it is. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah.